Did you know that glacial lake outburst floods can release more water in a few hours than some rivers do in an entire year? That's how powerful these events can be. Glacial lake outburst floods are a type of sudden and catastrophic flood that occurs when a glacial lake bursts, releasing enormous amounts of water and debris downstream. These events are often triggered by climate change, as rising temperatures cause glaciers to melt and the water they hold to overflow. The consequences can be devastating, with entire towns and ecosystems being swept away in a matter of hours. One of the world's largest glacier floods occurred in East Greenland between September 23rd and October 11th, 2024. This glacial lake outburst flood involved the release of over 3,000 billion liters of meltwater from Catalina Lake into the Scoresby Sound Fjord. The water level of the lake dropped by 154 meters during this period. Let's review a few facts about this release. The volume of water released was equivalent to 3 times Denmark's annual water consumption. Take a moment to understand. 3 times! The annual consumption of Denmark was released in just 2 weeks. That is an enormous amount of water. The energy released was comparable to the output of the world's largest nuclear power plant, running at full capacity for 22 days. Around 15 million people worldwide live under the threat of deadly glacial floods. Because of the sparse population, there was no loss of life in this incident. In recent years, the frequency and severity of glacial lake outburst floods have been increasing, and it's becoming clear that these events are not just a natural phenomenon, but a growing concern in the context of climate change. As temperatures continue to rise, the risk of glacial lake outburst floods will only increase, and it's essential that we understand the causes and consequences of these events. Dr. David Rounce, assistant professor at Carnegie Mellon University and a member of NASA's Sea Level Change Team, explains.
Glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOFs, are a significant concern as they can rapidly release large volumes of water, contributing to sea level rise. The increasing frequency of GLOFs due to climate change highlights the urgent need for monitoring and mitigation strategies. These events not only pose immediate risks to nearby communities but also add to the long-term challenge of managing rising sea levels. We use remote sensing observations to refine glacier projections and evaluate their impacts on sea level rise and water resources. Our team is involved in creating structural measures like spillways and diversion canals, as well as non-structural measures such as strategic land use planning and community-based strategies.
One of the most concerning aspects of glacial lake outburst floods is their unpredictability. Unlike traditional floods, which can be forecast days or even weeks in advance, outburst floods can occur with little to no warning, catching communities off guard and leaving them vulnerable to the devastating consequences. Recent scientific studies have been sounding the alarm on the increasing frequency of outburst flood events. In the Himalayas, for example, researchers have observed a significant increase in the number of outburst floods over the past few decades, with some studies suggesting that the frequency of these events could increase by as much as 50% by the end of the century. In Peru, an outburst flood event in 2010 released over 100,000 cubic meters of water into the nearby river, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. In the Tibetan Plateau, a region often referred to as the roof of the world, glacial lake outburst floods are becoming an increasingly common occurrence. A study published in 2019 found that the number of glacial lakes in the region has increased by over 10% since the 1970s, significantly increasing the risk of outburst floods in the area. In Bhutan, an outburst flood event in 2015 caused widespread damage to nearby communities, with entire villages being swept away by the raging waters. The event was so severe that it even caught the attention of the international community, with the United Nations issuing a statement expressing concern over the growing threat of glacial lake outburst floods in the region. Glacial lake outburst floods are not just a concern in the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau. In South America, the melting of glaciers in the Andes has led to an increase in outburst flood events, with some studies suggesting that the frequency of these events could increase by as much as 300% by the end of the century. The potential impacts of glacial lake outburst floods on communities and ecosystems are far-reaching and devastating. In addition to the immediate loss of life and property, outburst floods can also have long-term effects on the environment, including changes to river courses, reduced water quality, and the loss of biodiversity. One of the most deadly and powerful examples of the devastating consequences of an outburst flood is the 2015 event in the Langtang Valley of Nepal. On the morning of August 17th, a glacial lake burst, releasing over 10 million cubic meters of water into the nearby river. The resulting flood swept away entire villages, killing over 100 people and leaving countless others homeless. The immediate effects of the flood were devastating. Entire valleys were swept away, and the nearby river was choked with debris. The long-term effects of the flood were equally concerning, with changes to the river course and reduced water quality having a lasting impact on the local ecosystem. The Langtang Valley Outburst Flood is a powerful reminder of the risks involved with these events. It's a stark warning that we need to take action to mitigate the impacts of climate change and prepare for the increasing threat of glacial lake outburst floods. In conclusion, glacial lake outburst floods are a growing concern in the context of climate change. They're unpredictable, catastrophic, and have the potential to devastate entire communities and ecosystems. It's essential that we take action to raise awareness about these events and encourage action to mitigate their impacts. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts on the topic, please let us know in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about the impacts of climate change, check out our other videos on the subject.